All right. The title of today's video is Why You're Not Losing Weight and How to Fix It. We're going to be talking about overcoming weight loss plateaus. Um, Look at some of the reasons why you might be stuck in your weight loss journey. I think practical solutions on how to fix it, and then at the end we'll do like a recap of my week eight's results. And spoiler alert, I may or may not have hit a speed bump in the weight loss journey. Thus today's title. So without further ado, let's jump right in and talk about some of the reasons why you might not be losing weight loss. Good grief, why you might not be losing weight. And so in preparing for today's video, I thought I would consult the book of knowledge and check out YouTube and see what the gurus had to say on why you might be having difficulty losing weight. And here are some of the top reasons that I saw. First one up, hormones, the various issues with menopause, hypothyroid, insulin resistance, hyperinsulinemia, which, can affect those of us over 40 for sure, maybe some younger in some cases. Another one was stress. A lot of information out there about cortisol levels and a decent amount of information out there about stress eating. Metabolic changes, as we age, our metabolism slows down. Tons of videos out there about what to do, different fixes for changing your metabolism. Here's one of my favorites. You're gaining muscle. Your muscle weighs more than fat. And while that's not an untrue statement, we'll dig into that here a little bit more in a second. And then the last one, I've actually seen processed foods is obviously something we all are fairly aware about, I would imagine. But I've seen several articles recently, and I don't think this is necessarily new information because when I looked into it, there's some pretty, like we're talking 5-7-year-old information on the internet about cigarette companies and how they took over the food industry and made our processed foods more addictive. So those are some of the reasons I saw on YouTube. And I guess first off, I just want to say let's put aside the top issue there, the hormone stuff, for a second, and I'll even lump the cortisol levels into that. And let's talk about reason number 2, stress, and the second to last one there, gaining muscle. So first of all, stress eating. I think, there's maybe 3 reasons why you're not losing weight. One is there's a potential medical reason, which is that hormone stuff we just tabled for a second. Secondly, you're just not doing it right. And we'll get into that in a minute. And then thirdly, there could be a psychological component. And so I think, and I'm not totally against trying things for yourself. I certainly do that myself. I guess what I would maybe caution against is a complete self-diagnosis, particularly using YouTube and the internet. If you think you're struggling with a medical issue or a psychological issue, at some point, you should probably seek professional help for that. I mean, I'm not saying that you can't try some things at home first, but if they're not working, if you're still getting the same result, then it might be time to seek professional help, and maybe they can point you in the right direction. So stress I think would fall into that, stress eating. And I watched this one video where a lady went on about some very legitimate life crises that she went through and how that affected her and her eating and her struggle with weight loss. And I'm not trying to downplay any of that. It's very real for her. But that's maybe not everybody's issue. And there may be some things there that she needs to address just beyond trying to change her diet and her exercise. The gaining muscle weighs more than fat. Here's the deal with that. And I've heard that plenty before. Earlier in my life, I've heard people say it. I may have even said it. I don't know. But let's think this through for just a second. And I'm not denying the fact that muscle does indeed, it's more dense and it weighs more than fat. I don't think that's up for debate. What's obvious to me is that it's very difficult, particularly once you get over the age of 40, to gain muscle mass. I mean, you can just look at the plethora of YouTube videos, fitness influencers who are out there trying to talk about gaining muscle. And it's not an easy process. And you've got people doing testosterone replacement therapy. There's steroids. There's all kinds of performance enhancing drugs that people go to the extent of to gain muscle. Not to mention, if you're doing it just the purely traditional way or natural way, it's time consuming. Like, people spend a lot of time at the gym. If it were easy to gain muscle, we would all be walking around jacked and tan. And the reality is that's not the case. So I would caution you, if you're out of shape, and you're overweight, and you're over 40, and you're starting your fitness journey, and you get to the scale on a particular week and you're stuck, caution against the idea of, well, I must have gained some muscle because now I'm working out. No, you're not doing that yet. Not to the extent that it would show up on the scale. There's probably a different reason. So those are kind of some of the things that YouTube had to say about it. Here's kind of my thoughts on it. I think the first one is, you're not losing weight because you're not tracking what you're eating. And you might not be tracking your activity level. And we'll get to that in point 2 here in a second. But if you're not tracking what you eat, it is hard to account for everything that you're doing that might be adding unwanted calories or unnecessary calories. I think also, if you're not cognizant of how much fat there is in the stuff that you eat in the American diet, it's crazy. I'll just give you one quick example. Right about the time I started this journey, I had a kind of like a free lunch that they were providing at work for the staff. And it was honey baked ham. So it's a ham or a turkey sandwich. If you don't know what honey baked ham is, it's like lunch meat, ham and turkey. And I think they do hams for like holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving. Anyway, so they cater for lunches. So you got a honey baked ham or turkey sandwich. There was a small bag of chips, one of those little snack bags of chips. And then there were 2 salads. There was a potato salad and a broccoli salad. And the broccoli salad had like some kind of mayonnaise base or ranch base to it. And so I sat there and I thought about that as I was looking at the meal prep meal that I brought from home. And the first thing is, especially when you work in the emergency department, or probably anywhere in the hospital, or maybe anywhere in general, free food is always hard to pass up, right? It's free. They're giving me a free meal. I should eat it. But I opted not to. And as I thought about it, I wouldn't have, well, here's what I would have probably eaten. I would have probably opted for a turkey sandwich. I would have probably put mayonnaise on it because, and I'm not a huge mayonnaise person, but I put some on there. I would have eaten a small bag of chips because it's not a big bag, right? It's just a small bag. And while a small bag of chips and potato salad wouldn't probably be my first pick, the broccoli salad didn't look particularly good to me, even though I like broccoli, but this just wasn't appealing. So I would have probably had a scoop of the potato salad. So that's what I would likely have eaten. And prior to me starting this journey, if you would have asked me, is that food good for you? I wouldn't have necessarily thought it was a particularly bad lunch. I wouldn't have considered it health food by any stretch of the imagination, right? But it certainly wasn't a double Whopper with cheese, large fries or onion rings, and a chocolate milkshake, right? It was a turkey sandwich and potatoes and a potato salad and a small bag of chips. But if you start to add up just the fat content in that meal alone, and I haven't done it, maybe I'll do it in another video, but I think that just the fat content alone in that lunch was probably more than the recommended daily fat intake for a healthy adult. So that's just an example. And I've said in before in my previous videos, I can eat Reese cups like it's my job. If I'm not tracking what I'm eating, who knows how many I have, 1 here, 3 there, whatever, throughout the day. Just things like that. And I have personally found, by tracking what I eat, and all I do, I don't use an app. I don't do anything with the computer. I just literally write down in a book, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and I just make a quick note of what I had, like 1 egg, 2 egg whites scrambled with some salsa and an avocado, for example, for breakfast. And I write it down. I find that it does 2 things. 1, it keeps reminding me of what I have consumed during the day. And 2, it also makes me pause before I put something in my mouth, because I think, do I really want to write this down? Is this a good idea? And so I think it's helped that way as well. And then by not having a log and not having an accurate accounting for what you've been eating, then you have no accountability. So you're just kind of eating. And I have seen multiple people tell me, well, I eat healthy, but they're overweight. So again, discounting like any of those psychological issues, discounting that potential medical issue, it's physiologically impossible to quote unquote eat healthy and be overweight unless you're losing weight, right? You can be overweight and losing weight but then the proper thing to say would be, I just recently started eating healthy, not I eat healthy. So just having an awareness of what you're eating, I think, is a big, big deal, particularly as we age, because as we said in the previous slide, your metabolism does slow down. It's no longer the days where you can polish off, a medium or a large pepperoni pizza, a couple beers, and see nothing from it. That's the old days. Those are in the past. Point two, the reason why you're not losing weight: sedentary lifestyle. If you're not tracking how many steps that you walk every day, I guarantee most Americans are walking less than 10,000 steps, and certainly probably so few that they would be considered sedentary, which from what I've seen is less than 5,000. So again, it just goes with point one above with tracking food, tracking your activity, just getting up out of the chair, walking around, being more active. That will definitely give you some results. And if you're not losing weight, you're probably not being as active as you think you are. And then probably lastly, education. I'll give you a couple anecdotes here on education. I think people kind of view food in the way that they were like raised, how they ate it in their family growing up. And you might have some education about nutrition. I'm not discounting that. I'll give you an example. In healthcare, nurses are educated on nutrition. Nurses are expected to educate patients about nutrition when it's appropriate to whatever they're being seen for. And how many overweight nurses are there? And the answer is lots, including one right here. So you have to have some level of education, right? And then once you're educated and you know what's right, then you have to have the discipline to do it. But I just give you a quick example, because sometimes I think people, and maybe it goes back to my point about the person who says they eat healthy and they're overweight. Some people think they know what healthy eating is and they don't. And I'll give you some examples. The most ridiculous one, and sadly, I think she was only kidding, but it is an older person that I knew once upon a time ago who once said that potato chips are vegetables because they're made of potatoes. And like I said, I think she's only half kidding. Now, interestingly, she was not overweight, but I mean, that's just, obviously not the case. Let's see. I wrote down a couple more here, a couple examples. Oh, yeah. How about this one? A type 2 overweight diabetic person that I know in my family who would have breakfast. This would be her breakfast: a bowl of shredded, is it mini wheats? Whatever, the frosted wheats, a bowl of shredded frosted wheats. So let's break this down. What happens to milk chemically in your body when you digest milk? It turns to sugar. What happens to the processed grains that make up the shredded wheat? It turns to sugar. And then there's the frosting, which is sugar. So why not cut out the middleman and save some money and just eat a bowl of sugar in the morning if you're diabetic? But that's what she ate. And for some reason, I don't know if she thought, milk is good for you. I'm not saying it's not. Grains are good for you. Yeah, in some cases that is true. And maybe the fiber, maybe that's what got her, because she was older, retired, and thinking that made it healthy. But clearly that is not the appropriate breakfast for a diabetic person to be eating. But that is what she would eat. And then I got another one here real quick. This one just happened recently. So my father actually had to go into the hospital, and he's being sent home on a heart healthy diet. And so there's a discussion amongst the family members as we're kind of sitting in the waiting room about what he might eat. And he's a little bit of a picky eater, not terrible, but a little bit of one. And we're just going through the different, you can't eat this, can't eat that. And one of my family members, again, older, says, well, what about a cheese pizza? And I know what she was thinking. She was thinking, well, there's no sausage and there's no pepperoni, and that's meat. So those aren't good. And they're those kind of processed meats. So that's even worse. So we get rid of those, and he just has a cheese pizza. What's wrong with cheese on a pizza? Well, two things. One, the fat in the cheese, and two, the sodium in the pizza and the cheese are both bad. particularly in a pizza. So no, a cheese pizza is not heart healthy. And by the way, the examples I just gave you, especially the last two, we're talking about people with a master's degree and a bachelor's degree, right? So we're not talking about, you know, uneducated in general people, people that would be considered successful in life and functioning adults, you know. But that's just their perception of food. So if you're not educated about food, try to help get yourself that way, and then maybe just check what you think your education level might be by doing a little bit of research. And I would recommend, and again, I don't diet, right? I don't diet, I don't count calories, but I would recommend just looking at the Whole30 diet, looking at the Mediterranean diet. Those would be two good ones to just start with, and just like scroll through some different recipes and see if there's a couple things on there that you'd like to eat, and start there. That'd be a good step in the right direction. So these are observations that I have. I put observations from the emergency department because I do have conversations with patients when they're in there, and this is kind of one of the things that I find to be true, particularly on the education level, and somewhat about the sedentary lifestyle and the tracking. So we'll move along here. So what's the solution? So I propose this solution to you. If you're struggling, if you've hit a plateau, if you're having a hard time losing weight, this is my proposed solution. And it's my 3 simple steps. And you can watch my very first video where I go through them in more detail, but briefly, here they are. Move more, eat better, and lift heavy things. And number 1, move more. My personal goal is 10,000 steps per day minimum. And I track it using an Apple Watch. If you don't have any kind of Fitbit, Apple Watch, smartwatch, you can certainly track time. And if you're completely sedentary, 10,000 steps a day might be too much to start with, and that's okay. Start with something lower, but start keeping track and increase it incrementally. Eat better, just kind of what I talked about. Do better than what you did before. In my first video, I gave an example of McDonald's. Instead of ordering a Big Mac, large fries, and a large Coke, try a double cheeseburger, a medium fry, and a Diet Coke. Obviously, they're both junk food, or fast food. Junk food was the same thing, I guess. And you don't want to eat like that forever, but making small incremental changes over time is going to help you get there. And then the last thing, lift heavy things, simple strength training 3 times per week. So that's the simple steps, but let's talk about busting out of a plateau that you may or may not be in. So here's my plateau busters things, right? So what can you do under move more? Well, the first thing you can do is you can increase your duration, or you can increase your step count. So if I hit a plateau and I'm at 10,000 steps a day and I'm tracking it and I'm actually hitting it, which, sometimes you might not be. So then there's your first answer right there is, I don't even have to increase my duration per se. I just need to achieve my goal. But if you're hitting the 10,000 and you're still at a standstill, then increase your step count. Maybe go to 12,000 per day. Maybe go to 15,000 per day. So that's one thing that you can do. Second thing you could do is you could increase the intensity. You can increase the intensity by the speed that you're walking. Maybe not the sauntering, walking and talking pace, but maybe picking it up a little bit. You could use some resistance. A couple of ways that you could do that is if you were on if you were just out walking, you could use like a weighted vest or a backpack or something like that, which would be a form of weight. If you had like an exercise bike, you could actually dial up the resistance on there. And then my last example of the incline, if you were on like a treadmill, you could use the incline, and just dial that up a little bit. Those would all be 4 things that you could simply do to increase your intensity of your walking. Or you could do both. So that's under that. And try any of those, right? And see if it works. And if not, then move on to the next thing. So for eating better, well, what's the first thing I'm going to do? I'm at a plateau. Well, have I been tracking 100% of my intake? Honestly tracking it? And if the answer is no, then start and see how that changes. I think I would add, if you're also for a plateau, try to reduce, if not eliminate, sugar and processed foods. And if you have to, just reduce your daily intake or your total weekly intake, whatever it takes. But work toward elimination, but certainly reduction is going to help you get over the plateau. And then lastly, on the eat better, eat whole foods, and that's going to help. That's one, going to help keep you full longer. So you're going to eat less garbage. And two, it's going to replace some of that sugar and processed food. So if you have a sweet tooth, eat an apple. And I know an apple's not the same as a candy bar. I get that. But just as an example. So trend toward the whole foods, get rid of sugar, get rid of processed foods as best you can. Lift heavy things. You can do some things there, whether you're doing just body weight strength training like push-ups and calisthenics, or whether you're using dumbbells, whatever you're using for some strength training. The first thing you can do is you could increase your reps. If you're doing 15, you could do 20. If you're doing 10, 15. The cautionary thing for those of us over the age of 40 is we have to be careful of our joint health. If you start increasing your reps, you can damage joints by overdoing it. So just be cognizant of that. Maybe this isn't the best view. Let me pop over to this. The next thing that you could do is increase the weight. So keep your reps the same, just increase the amount of weight that you're lifting. Again, with this one, be cognizant of the potential injury. When I started this, I don't know, 6 months ago, when I very first gave it a shot before I actually started this 3-step program, I did try to lift some weights. I realized that I'm 55. I started lifting what I thought would be light weights. And sadly, when I was younger, they would have been light weights, but they're not light for me now. And I injured myself. Like I hurt my biceps pretty good to the point that I just stopped altogether. And so how's that going to help me get over a plateau if I injure myself? So you can increase the weight. And then the last thing I would say is you could increase the complexity of your strength training. So my example on this is, a bicep curl versus a push-up. A push-up, you're obviously using a lot more major muscle groups than just a bicep curl. I'm not saying you can't do bicep curls. I'm just saying try to incorporate more complex strength training exercises into your routine so that you're getting more benefit for the amount of time that you're putting into it. Because I know time's a factor, at least it is for me, and I would think it is for most people. And again, or you could do any combination of those three with regard to weight training. So these are my best under the 3-step plan, my best kind of swag at trying to break through a plateau. I think it'll work. If it doesn't work, then perhaps it's time to have a conversation with a professional about a medical issue. Maybe there's a hormone thing that can be fixed medically that will help you, or a psychological issue, et cetera. But I think for most people, just focusing on these 3 areas and making these incremental changes, you should see some results. All right. And then my last point, kind of to wrap this part up, is the simplest solution is almost always the best. So, I gave you, of the 3 steps, I gave you 2 or 3 different things that you can try under each one. So is that like 9 or 10 things that you could possibly try? Start with one and start with the easiest, the one that's the least time consuming, that's a no-brainer. Start with that. And then if that doesn't work, move to the more complex, right? Because if you start trying to do the most complex stuff first, the chances that you're going to get discouraged and experience some failure are higher. So you want to keep with the program. This is the idea of this is a sustainable lifestyle, not just a 30-minute blitz on trying to lose weight before a particular event so that you can fit into your old suit or your old dress or whatever, but a sustainable lifestyle. So start with the simplest stuff, the least time consuming, the things that won't cost any money, and then move up from there incrementally to get better results. So that's my thought on trying to bust through a plateau. We'll talk about my plateau here in a minute. If you've got any thoughts yourself, sure, please leave me a comment. And then I'm going to go ahead and transition into my week 8 results here. And I just have, sorry, I wrote a couple notes here because I've never done a live stream. So this is first for me. But I just wanted to, as we transition, just take a quick little bit of housekeeping here for some folks. First up, I'd like to thank all of my subscribers, all 26 of you or whatever. Only only 3 billion more subscribers to go, and then we'll have everybody, but we'll be happy with the 26 we have now. So thank you for subscribing. I hope you find this information useful, and I hope you're using it in your life to see some results. So that's number one. I'm doing this live now because, and it'll kind of tie into my week 8, what happened. I'm doing this live now, frankly, to help me catch up, because what's happening was I've been getting behind. Like, I track all this stuff, but I'm not able to keep up with the video production to be able to put it out in a timely manner. And so in week 8, I hit a plateau from a weight loss workout perspective. And I've got these YouTube videos stacking up on me. And I honestly almost quit. I was like that close to just throwing in the towel on YouTube and likely this whole process. And my wife thankfully talked me out of it, and she helps me a lot. She's my main video editor, and she was also my inspiration to not quit. So that's why I'm doing the lives. I'm going to probably do a few more lives just until I can get myself caught up. But for me, for right now, it's easier. If you enjoy this format and it's better for you, please drop me a comment. I'm happy to keep doing them. But for now, I'm just using it as a tool to help me get over my YouTube plateau. So week 8 interview, what happened? Well, if you remember last week, I went on vacation. When I left for vacation, I was finally down below 200 pounds. And even though I knew I was going to be indulging in some things like some of my favorite beer and some Canadian Kit Kats and buffalo wings, etc., that I had a plan to kind of get myself through that and continue my weight loss journey. And I was not successful doing that for multiple reasons I laid out in the previous video. And then we go home and I go into week 8. And in week 8, I'll just start out with my step counts. So my step count, my daily average in week 8 was 9,643. So below my 10,000, and markedly below, because, generally speaking, my goal is to try to stay well above 10,000, just so I don't get myself in a bind if I have a bad day. But I had multiple bad days in week 8. And let's talk about food here real quick. I'll go back to the slide here. So there's my weekly meal planner. Not particularly proud of it, but the one thing that you'll notice right off the bat, I think, is the continued poor eating and continued consumption of alcoholic beverages beyond just vacation. And frankly, that's me kind of being a baby and throwing a fit and saying, hey, I got sick on vacation and some of that time was stolen from me, and darn it, I'm going to reclaim that time because I didn't have to quite go back to work as soon as we got home. So I just kind of continued the poor behavior into the week, which then led to the spiraling effect of the plateau and wanting to quit. So thankfully, I was able to overcome both those things with the help of my wife. But that's it for the food situation. And then as far as lifting, once again, a big fat 0. 2 weeks in a row, no strength training, nothing, not even a single push-up, which is pretty pathetic. But then again, I've already told you that my attitude wasn't probably the best. So there we go. So that's kind of the recap of week 8. I was able to overcome that plateau. So if you catch the next episode, we'll talk about the results from week 9. And then, frankly, I use some of the exact same things that I talked about today on how to overcome a plateau to help myself get over it with a little bit of discipline and just reminding myself why I'm doing this in the first place. So just as to wrap up here, if you've got any comments that you'd like to leave, I'd love to hear how you guys are doing on your weight loss journey. If you like this format, if it's good. One of the problems with my work life is that I don't have a consistent lifestyle. So it would be difficult for me to say, like, I'm always going to go live at, Friday at 4 p.m. So it's going to be kind of more of random timing. But I'm hoping that, people who are following along will just be able to catch it after it's been recorded. So I'm not particularly worried about live audience per se. But if the format's good, let me know that as well. And then, as always, until next time, just remember to move more, eat better, and lift heavy things. Thanks for showing up.